Okay. Reading Pinocchio. Okay, we are up to chapter 32. Chapter 32. Pinocchio gets donkey's ears and then becomes a real donkey and starts to bray. And what was this surprise? I shall tell you, my dear readers. The surprise was that Pinocchio, when he woke up, scratched his head, and while doing so he noticed. Can you make any guess as to what he noticed? He noticed, to his great amazement, that his ears had grown several inches. You must know that puppets from their birth have very small ears, in fact, so small that they are invisible to the naked eye. So you can imagine how surprised he was when he noticed that his ears had grown so long during the night that they looked like two brooms. He hurried to find a mirror that he might see himself, but he could not find one. So he filled his wash basin with water, looked into it, and saw what he had been hoping never to see. He saw himself decorated with a magnificent pair of donkey's ears. Can you imagine poor Pinocchio's sorrow, shame, and despair? He began to cry and scream and beat his head against the wall, but the more he cried, the longer his ears grew, and they became hairy at the top. A charming little squirrel that lived on the floor above him, hearing his loud cries, came down to see what the matter was, and, seeing the puppet in such a state, she asked earnestly, "What's happened to you, my dear neighbour?" "I am sick, dear squirrel, I am very sick, and of such an awful disease. Do you know how to count a pulse?" "Yes, I think so." "Then will you please see if I have a fever?" The squirrel put her right forepaw on Pinocchio's pulse, and then said with a sigh, "My friend, I am very sorry, but I have bad news for you." "What is it?" "You have a very dangerous fever." "What kind of fever is it?" "Donkey fever." "I never heard of such a fever," said the puppet, though he knew well what she meant. "Then I shall explain it to you," answered the squirrel, "for you must know that in a few hours you will no longer be a puppet or a boy." What will I be?" "In a few hours you will be a real donkey, like those that draw carts or carry cabbages and vegetables to the market." "Oh, poor me!" cried Pinocchio, seizing his ears with his hands and pulling and jerking them as if they belonged to somebody else. "My dear lad," said the squirrel, wishing to console him, "you can't do anything. It is your destiny, for it is written in the decrees above that lazy children who dislike books, schools, and masters, and who spend their time with toys, games, and amusements, must end up sooner or later by becoming little donkeys." "Is that really true?" sobbed Pinocchio. "It is, unhappily. It's no use crying now. You should have thought of that before it was too late." But it's not my fault. Believe me, little squirrel, it's all Lampwick's fault." "Who is Lampwick?" "One of my schoolmates. I wanted to go home. I wanted to be good. I wanted to study and never do any mischief. But Lampwick said, 'Why should you bother about studying? Why do you want to go to school? Instead, come with me to Playland. There we shall never study. We shall only play from morning till evening, and always be happy.'" "Why did you listen to that false friend, to that bad companion?" Because, dear little squirrel, I am a heartless puppet with no sense. Oh, if I had just a little bit of heart, I'd never have abandoned that kind fairy who loved me as a mother, and who had done so much for me. And now I could be a real boy like the others, instead of a puppet. Oh, if I meet Lampwick, he'll get it. I'll fix him." He wanted to leave the room, but at the door he remembered his ears. and he was ashamed to show them. So then what do you think he did? He took a large cotton cap and pulled it over his head, right down to his nose. Then he went out and looked for Lampwick. He searched the streets, the squares, and theatres, everywhere, but he could not find him. He turned to everyone he met, but no one had seen him. At last he went to his house and knocked at the door. "Who's there?" asked Lampwick from inside. "Pinocchio," said the puppet. "Just a minute and I'll let you in." After half an hour the door was opened. Imagine Pinocchio's surprise when he went in and found that his friend Lampwick had a great cotton cap on his head, which came down over the end of his nose. Seeing that, Pinocchio felt somewhat better, and he said to himself, "Perhaps he has the same sickness as I have. Can it be possible that he too has the donkey fever?" He pretended not to see anything, and said, smiling, "How are you, my dear Lampwick?" "Very well as a mouse in a Parmesan cheese." "Do you really mean it?" "I have no reason to tell you a lie." "Excuse me, my friend, but why then do you wear a cap that covers your ears?" "The doctor ordered it, because I've hurt my knee. And you, dear puppet, why do you wear a cotton cap down over your nose?" The doctor prescribed it, because I hurt my leg." "Oh, poor Pinocchio! Oh, poor Lampwick!" They kept silent for a long while, and the two friends looked knowingly at each other. At last the puppet said in a sweet voice full of persuasion, "Just to satisfy my curiosity, dear Lampwick, have you ever had any trouble with your ears?" "Never. And you?" "Never, except that one of my ears was aching this morning." "Yes, so was mine." "Yours too? Which one aches?" "Both of them." "And yours?" "Both of them." "Do you think we have the same sickness?" "I'm afraid I do." "Will you do me a favor, Lampwick?" "Yes, with greatest pleasure." "Will you let me see your ears?" "Why not? But first I'd like to see yours, dear Pinocchio." No, you be the first." "No, dear fellow, you first, and then I'll show mine." "Well," said the puppet, "let us agree like good friends." "What to?" "We'll take off our caps at the same time. Agreed?" "Agreed." "Then ready," and Pinocchio began to count in a loud voice. 1, 2, 3. At 3 they took off their caps and threw them in the air, and then something happened that sounds unbelievable, yet it was true. When Pinocchio and Lampwick saw that the same misfortune had befallen them both, instead of being ashamed and despairing, they tried to wag their long ears, and finished by laughing at each other. They laughed and laughed until they nearly exploded, but suddenly Lampwick stopped laughing. He staggered and grew pale as he spoke to his friend. "Help! Help, Pinocchio! What's the trouble? Alas, I can't stand up straight." "Neither can I," cried Pinocchio, tottering and weeping. While talking they bent down on all fours and started running around the room on their hands and feet. As they ran, their hands became hoofs, their faces grew as long as muzzles, and their backs were covered by light grey hair with black spots. But the most dreadful and the most humiliating moment for those two miserable boys was when they felt their tails growing. Overcome by shame and sorrow, they began to cry and lament over their fate. Oh, if they had only kept quiet! Instead of sighs and lamentations, they brayed like donkeys. Yes, both together in chorus they brayed loudly. Meanwhile, somebody knocked at the door, and a voice shouted, "Open the door! I am the little man, the driver who brought you here. Open at once, or it will be the worse for you." Chapter 33. As Pinocchio becomes a real donkey, he is sold to the manager of a show, and learns how to dance and jump through a hoop, but he is lamed one evening, and then is bought by a man who decides to make a drum of his skin. As they did not open the door, the little man kicked it open, and addressed Pinocchio and Lampwick with his usual laugh. "Hurrah for you! You brayed very well. I recognized your voices at once, and now here I am." At these words the two donkeys became silent. Their heads were hanging down, and their tails between their legs. At first the little man stroked and patted them, then drawing forth a curry-comb, he combed them well. When they were shiny so that he could see his face in them, he bridled them and took them to market, hoping to sell them at a profit. Indeed, buyers were not lacking. Lampwick was sold to a farmer whose donkey had died the day before, and Pinocchio was bought by the manager of a company of clowns and rope-walkers who intended teaching him to jump and dance together with the other animals belonging to the company. Now you can see, my little readers, what a fine business the little man carried on. He was a cruel little monster, seemingly all milk and honey, going round the world with his coach. By promises and flattery he collected all the children who did not like their books and did not want to go to school. When his coach was full, he carried the children off to playland so that they might spend their time playing and amusing themselves. When these poor children, from endless playing and lack of studying, became so many donkeys, he took them to market and sold them happily. In a few years, by this means, he earned a lot of money and became a millionaire. I do not know what happened to Lampwick, but I know that Pinocchio, from the very first moment, led a hard life, full of drudgery. When he was led into the stable, his master put straw in his manger, but Pinocchio spat it out after he had tasted it. Then his master, grumbling, put some hay in the manger, but Pinocchio did not like that either. "Ugh! You don't even like hay?" shouted his master, full of anger. "Leave it to me, my fine donkey. If you are so fussy, I know how to cure you." And he beat his legs with a whip for a start. The pain made Pinocchio cry and bray. "Eeyaw! I can't digest straw." "Then eat hay," replied his master, who understood donkey dialect perfectly. "Eeyaw! Hay gives me the stomach ache. Do you want to tell me I have to feed a donkey like you on chicken breasts and capon jelly?" said his master, growing still more angry, whipping him again and again. After this second whipping, Pinocchio thought it would be wiser to keep silent, and he said no more. The stable door was shut, and Pinocchio remained alone. As it was so long since he had eaten anything, hunger made him yawn, and when he yawned, he opened his mouth as large as an oven. At last, as there was nothing but hay in his manger, he decided to eat it, and after chewing it a long time, he shut his eyes and swallowed it. This hay isn't so bad," he said, "but how much better it would have been if I had gone on with my studies. Instead of hay, I might now be eating the crusty end of a fresh loaf of bread with a fine slice of sausage. No matter." In the morning he looked again for a little hay, but he found none, for he had eaten it all during the night. Then he tried a mouthful of chopped straw, but as he chewed it he thought what a difference there was between the taste of chopped straw and rice or macaroni. "No matter," he said again, and he went on chewing. "I hope my misfortune will serve as a lesson to disobedient children who don't like studying. No matter, no matter." "Why no matter?" shouted his master, who came into the stable at that moment. "Do you think, my dear donkey, that I brought you just to feed you? I brought you to do some work, and to help me make money. Get up now and do your best. Come into the circus, and I'll teach you to jump through a hoop, breaking the paper with your head, to dance, waltz, and polka, and to stand on your hind legs." So poor Pinocchio, by hook or by crook, had to learn all these fine tricks, but it took him 3 months, and he got so many sharp cuts from the whip. At last the day arrived when his master announced a really wonderful performance. Gaily coloured posters were placed at all the street corners. You may believe me, the theatre was full an hour before the opening of the show. Not one more seat could have been bought even for its weight in gold. The seats round the ring were packed with girls and boys, impatient to see the famous little donkey Pinocchio dancing. After the first part of the show, the ringmaster came forward. He was wearing a black coat with white tights and boots reaching above his knees. After a deep bow, he made the following ridiculous speech. Honored public, ladies and gentlemen, the humble undersigned, staying temporarily in your city, wishes to have the honor, not less than the pleasure, of presenting to this intelligent and distinguished audience a famous little donkey who has had the honor of dancing before the sovereigns of all the principal courts of Europe. I thank you for listening attentively to me, and beg that you assist us with your inspiring presence and find excuses for our shortcomings. This speech was received with much laughter and applause, but the applause was redoubled and became tempestuous when the little donkey Pinocchio appeared in the middle of the ring. He was magnificently decked out. He had a new bridle of shiny leather, with brass buckles and studs, and white camellias behind his ears. His mane was divided into small curls, each one decorated with coloured silk ribbons. A broad band of gold and silver surrounded his body, and his tail was braided with crimson and blue velvet ribbons. In fact, he was a lovely little donkey. Presenting him to the public, the manager added these words: Honourable audience, I am not here to tell you untrue stories about the great difficulties I had to conquer in order to capture and subjugate this mammal, as he was feeding wild and free in the mountains and plains of the torrid zone. Observe, I beseech you, the ferocious gleams in his eyes. After every tender means of taming him failed, I was forced to use the last resort, the whip. Yet all my kindness, which should have increased his love for me, only made him fiercer day by day. However, following the system of Gaul, I found on his cranium a bump, which the Faculty of Medicine in Paris declared to be the generator of hair and of dance. Therefore, I have taught him to dance, and also to jump through hoops and frames covered with paper. Admire him and judge him. But before I take my leave of you, permit me, ladies and gents, to invite you to the performance of tomorrow evening. Should bad weather threaten, then the show instead of tomorrow evening will be set back to tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the a.m. Here the ringmaster bowed again, and then, turning to Pinocchio, he said, Come, Pinocchio, before you start your performance, salute this distinguished audience, ladies, gentlemen, and children. Pinocchio obediently bent his knees, and remained kneeling until the ringmaster cracked his whip and shouted, Walk. Then the little donkey got up and walked round the ring. After a while, the ringmaster shouted, Trot. Pinocchio obeyed the order and started to trot. Gallop! And Pinocchio broke into a gallop. Run! And Pinocchio ran as fast as he could. Suddenly, while he raced round the ring, the ringmaster raised his arm in the air and fired off a pistol. At that the donkey, pretending to be wounded, fell down as if he were dead. As he rose up, amid applause and clapping of hands, he lifted his head and looked up at the people, and there he saw in one of the boxes a beautiful lady who wore a heavy gold chain round her neck, from which hung a medallion. On the medallion was the portrait of a puppet. That is my portrait. The lady is the fairy, said Pinocchio to himself, recognizing her immediately. He was so overcome with joy that he tried to cry, Oh, my dear fairy! Oh, my dear fairy! But instead of these words, there came forth from his throat a bray, so long and loud that everyone present laughed, and especially the children. Then the ringmaster, to teach him that it was not good manners to bray like that before the public, struck him on the nose with the handle of his whip. The poor little donkey put out his tongue and licked his nose at least 5 minutes to ease the pain he felt. But how great was his disappointment when, turning to the box again, he saw that it was empty. The fairy had disappeared. He thought he was going to die. His eyes were full of tears, and he began to cry bitterly. However, no one noticed it, least of all the ringmaster, who, cracking his whip, shouted, "Courage, Pinocchio! Now show this gracious audience how elegantly you can leap through the hoop." Pinocchio tried 2 or 3 times, but each time he came to the hoop, he thought it easier to run under than through it. At last he leaped through it, but his right hind leg caught in the hoop, and he fell heavily to the ground on the other side. When he got up, he was lame. He could walk back to the stable only with great difficulty. "Bring out Pinocchio! We want the little donkey! Bring out the little donkey!" shouted the children, who were all very sorry about his accident. But the little donkey did not appear any more that evening. When the veterinary surgeon, that is, the animal doctor, saw him next morning, he declared that he would stay lame for the rest of his life. Then the ringmaster said to his stable boy, "What can I do with a lame donkey? Why should I feed him if he can't work? Take him to the market and sell him." As soon as they came to the market, they found a buyer, who asked the boy, "How much do you want for this lame donkey?" 5 crowns. I'll give you 5 pence. You mustn't think I'm buying him for use. I'm buying him only for his skin. I see he has a very hard skin, and I want to make a drum for the village band." You can imagine how Pinocchio must have felt when he heard that it was to be a drum. As soon as the 5 pence was paid, the new owner led the little donkey to a rock by the shore, tied a stone to his neck and a long rope to one leg. Then he gave him a sudden push, and Pinocchio fell into the water. Pinocchio, with that stone on his neck, went immediately to the bottom, and his owner, holding the rope tight, sat down on the rock to wait until the donkey was drowned so that he might skin him. Chapter 34. Pinocchio, thrown into the sea and eaten by the fishes, becomes a puppet again, but while swimming towards dry land, he is swallowed by a terrible shark. When the little donkey had been under water about an hour, his new owner said to himself, "That poor little lame donkey must surely be drowned by this time. I'll pull him up and make a fine drum of his skin." He began hauling in the rope he had tied to the donkey's leg. He hauled and hauled and hauled, and at last there appeared on the water, what do you think? Instead of a dead donkey, there was a live puppet, wriggling like an eel. While he saw that wooden puppet, the poor man thought he was dreaming. He was struck dumb and astonished. He stood there with his mouth open and his eyes starting out of his head. When he recovered a little, he could only stammer, Where is the little donkey that I threw into the water? What happened to him?" "I am the little donkey," answered the puppet, laughing. "You?" "I." "Ah, you scallywag, don't play any tricks on me." "Play tricks on you? Nothing of the sort, my dear master. I am very serious. But how can it be that you, who were a little donkey a short while ago, have now become a wooden puppet? It must be due to the sea-water. It does sometimes work real miracles." "Be careful, puppet. Don't try to pull my leg. You'll get it if I lose my patience. Well, master, do you want to hear my true story? If you free my leg from this rope, I'll tell it to you." The good man was very curious to hear his true story, so he quickly freed his leg, and Pinocchio, free as a bird once more, began to speak as follows. "You must know that I was once a wooden puppet, just as I am now, and I was on the verge of becoming a real boy like so many others. The trouble started because I didn't like to study, and I listened to evil companions, and so I ran away from home. One day I woke up to find myself a donkey with long ears and a long tail. Oh, I was so ashamed of myself. Dear master, I hope the good Saint Anthony will keep you from ever being ashamed. I was taken to the market with the other donkeys and sold to the ringmaster of a circus. He taught me to dance and leap through a hoop, but one evening, during the performance, I fell and my legs got lamed. The ringmaster had no use for a lame donkey, so he sent me to the market, and you bought me. I well know that, since I paid 5 pence for you, and now who will give me back my poor pennies? And why did you buy me? To make a drum out of my skin? A drum? That's true. And now where shall I find another skin? Don't despair, master. There are so many little donkeys in this world. Well, you impertinent urchin, is that the end of your story? No, answered the puppet. A couple more words, and I'll have finished. After buying me, you brought me here to kill me, and as you pitied me, you preferred to tie a stone to my neck and throw me into the sea. This humane sentiment counts to your credit, and I shall be grateful to you forever, my dear master. You reckoned without the fairy. And who is this fairy? She is my mother, and like every mother, she loves her child dearly, and never loses sight of him, and helps him in all his troubles, even when, because of his foolishness and his naughty ways, he deserves no help. So, as I wanted to say, as soon as the good fairy saw I was in danger of drowning, she sent an immense shoal of fish who thought that I was a dead donkey, and began to eat me. And what huge bites they took! I would never have believed that fish were greedier than boys. Some ate my ears, others my muzzle, others my neck and mane, my hoofs, and even the skin off my leg and off my back, and one of them was so polite that he condescended to eat my tail. From this day forward, said this horrified buyer, I vow never to eat fish. It would be a pretty sight to open a mullet or a whiting and find a donkey's tail inside. I agree with you, said the puppet, laughing. As for that, you must know that when the donkey's hide that covered me from head to foot was eaten away, naturally the bones remained, or, to be exact, the wood, for, as you see, I am made of very hard wood. But after the first bite the fish saw that there was no more meat to eat, and disgusted by such indigestible food, they swam off in all directions, without even saying thank you. That is why when you hauled in the rope you found a live puppet and not a dead donkey. Enough of your story, shouted the man in a rage. I have paid 5 pence for you, and I want my money back. Do you know what I'll do? I'll take you back to the market and sell you for firewood. Sell me if you want to. I don't mind, said Pinocchio. But as he spoke, he made a big leap and plunged into the sea, and he swam gaily away. As he swam gaily away, he shouted to the poor buyer, "Goodbye, master. When you want a skin to make a drum, remember me." He kept on laughing as he swam farther away. After a little while, he turned again and shouted still louder, "Goodbye, master. When you want a little nice dry firewood, remember me." In the twinkling of an eye, he was so far away that he was hardly visible. In fact, there was only a black dot on the water when he now and then lifted an arm or a leg, or jumped about like a joyful dolphin. Pinocchio was swimming, not caring where he was going, when he saw in the sea a rock which looked like white marble. On the top of the rock a beautiful little goat was bleating and beckoning to him to come nearer. However, the strangest thing was that the goat's fleece, instead of being white or black or a mixture of these two colours as you find with other goats, was blue, a very bright blue, that reminded him of the hair of that lovely child. Pinocchio's heart began to beat very quickly. Doubling his energy, he swam towards the white rock. He was already halfway there when he saw, rushing towards him in the water, a sea monster with a horrible head, and its mouth, which was like a deep cave, wide open, with 3 rows of teeth that would have frightened anyone, even in a picture. Do you know what this monster was? It was no less than the gigantic shark which has been mentioned more than once in this history, and which, owing to its dreadful killings and its ravenous greed, was called the Attila of fish and fishermen. Poor Pinocchio was terribly frightened seeing such a monster. He tried to dodge him, to swim elsewhere, or to swim faster than this monster, but that huge gaping mouth came right after him, quickly as an arrow. "Hurry, Pinocchio, for mercy's sake," bleated the beautiful little goat. Pinocchio swam desperately, using every ounce of his strength. "Quickly, Pinocchio, the monster is close behind you." And Pinocchio swam faster than ever, swift as a ball from a gun. He was near the rock, and the little goat was leaning out over the sea, and stretching out her front legs to help him out of the water. But it was too late. The monster had caught him, and drawing in his breath, he sucked him in as one sucks an egg. He sucked him in so fiercely and greedily, and Pinocchio fell so hard against the monster's stomach that he lost consciousness for a quarter of an hour. When he came to himself, he had no idea where he was. All around him it was very dark. The darkness was so thick and deep that he felt as if he had dived head first into a bottle full of ink. He listened, but he heard nothing. Only from time to time a great gust of wind blew in his face. At first he did not know where the wind came from, but he soon noticed that it came from the monster's lungs. At first Pinocchio tried to be brave, but when he knew for certain that he was inside the shark's body, as in a prison, he began to weep and sob. "Help! Help! Oh, poor me! Will no one come and save me?" "Who would come to save you, you miserable wretch?" said a voice in the darkness, like a guitar out of tune. "Who speaks?" asked Pinocchio, frozen with fear. "It's I. I'm a poor tunny fish who was swallowed at the same time as you. What sort of a fish are you?" "I have nothing to do with fishes. I'm a puppet. If you're not a fish, why did you come here that the monster should swallow you?" "I didn't come here. He swallowed me. What are we going to do now in this cellar?" "We must resign ourselves and wait for the shark to digest us." "But I don't want to be digested," shouted Pinocchio, beginning to cry again. "Neither do I want to be digested," said the tunny, "but I'm wise enough to console myself with the thought that when one is born a tunny, it's more dignified to die in the water than in oil." "Stuff and nonsense!" cried Pinocchio. "That is my opinion," replied the tunny, "and opinions, as our tunny politicians say, must be respected. However that may be, I want to get away from here. I want to escape." "Escape then, if you can. The shark that has swallowed us, is he very big?" "His body is more than a mile long, and I'm not counting his tail." While they were talking in the darkness, Pinocchio thought he saw a gleam of light very far away. "What can that light be that I see so far away?" asked Pinocchio. "It's one of our fellows in misfortune who, like us, is waiting to be digested. I'm going to find him. It might possibly be an old fish who could tell me how to get out of here. I hope so, dear puppet." "Goodbye, tunny. Goodbye, puppet. Good luck to you. Where shall we meet again?" "Who knows? Better not think of it." Chapter 35. Pinocchio finds in the body of the shark. Whom does he find? Read this chapter and you will know. Pinocchio, having said goodbye to the tunny, started feeling his way in the darkness through the shark's body, finding his way along step by step towards that dim, flickering light in the distance. The farther he went, the better he could see the little light. He walked and walked, and at last, when he reached it, what did he find? I shall give you 1,000 guesses. He found a little table, well prepared, with a lighted candle stuck in a green glass bottle, and, sitting at the table, there was a snow-white old man, who was eating some fish, which was so much alive that sometimes they jumped out of his mouth while he ate them. Seeing the old man, Poor Pinocchio suddenly felt so happy that he nearly fainted. He wanted to laugh, to cry, to say thousands of things, and instead he could only stammer some broken, senseless words. At last he managed to utter a cry of joy, and opening his arms, he threw them around the old man's neck, shouting, "Oh, Daddy, my Daddy, have I found you at last? I'll never leave you again, never, never, never." "So my eyes do not deceive me," said the old man, rubbing them with both hands. "You are really my dear Pinocchio. Yes, yes, it's really truly me. Do you still remember me? Oh, my dear Daddy, how good you are, and to think that I... Oh, but when you know how many things I've been through, and how many things have gone wrong, you know, dear Daddy, that the very same day you sold your coat to me to buy me a primer so that I could go to school, I ran away to see the puppet show, and the showman was ready to put me in the fire, the better to roast his mutton. It was the same man who gave me 5 gold pieces to bring to you, but I met the fox and the cat, and they told me to the red crab, and they took me to the Red Crab Inn, where they gobbled up everything like hungry wolves, and I was left alone in the night. And I met assassins who ran after me, and I ran, and they followed me, and I ran, and they were still after me, and I ran until they hung me on the branch of the big oak tree, where the beautiful child with blue hair sent a carriage for me, and the doctors, when they looked at me, said straight away, 'If he isn't dead, it shows that he's alive.' And when I told a lie, my nose began to grow so that I couldn't get out of the room, and I went with the fox and the cat for the very purpose of burying the 4 gold pieces, for I had spent one of them at the inn, and the parrot laughed at me, and instead of 2,000 gold pieces, I didn't find anything. And when the judge heard about it, he put me in jail to please the thieves, and when I left prison, I saw a bunch of grapes, and I was caught in a trap, and the peasant, who was perfectly right, put a dog collar on me, and made me guard the poultry yard. But he soon found out I was innocent, and sent me away. And the serpent with the smoking tail started to laugh, and broke a blood vessel, and then I came back to the beautiful child's home, but she was dead. And the pigeon saw that I was crying, and said, 'I saw your father making a boat to go after you.' And I said, 'Oh, if only I had wings too.' And he said, 'Do you want to go to your father?' And I said, 'Do I? Of course I do. But who will take me?' And he said, 'I will take you.' And I said, 'How?' And he said, 'Get on my back.' And so we flew all night, and when the morning came, we saw the fishermen looking out over the sea, and they said to me, 'There's a poor man in a tiny boat, who'll soon be drowned.' And I knew you at once, for though you were so far away, my heart told me it was you, and I made signs to you to come back." "I recognized you too," said Geppetto, "and I would have been glad to come back, but how could I? The waves were so high, and a giant one upset my boat. A horrid shark that was near came towards me as soon as he saw me in the water, and sticking out his tongue, he swallowed me as if I had been a tart." "How long have you been shut up in here?" asked Pinocchio. "It must surely be 2 years since that day. 2 years, my Pinocchio, that have seemed like 2 centuries." "How have you managed to live here? Where did you find the candle and the matches to light it? Who gave them to you?" "If you listen, I'll tell you the whole story. In that same storm that overturned my boat, a merchant ship was also sunk. The sailors were all saved, but the ship was lost. The shark had a very good appetite that day, and after he swallowed me, he swallowed the ship too." "What? How did he do it?" asked Pinocchio in amazement. "All in one mouthful. All that he spat out was the main mast, because it stuck between his teeth like a fishbone. Luckily for me, the ship was full of cans of preserved meat, biscuits, bottles of wine, dried grapes, cheese, coffee, sugar, candles, and matches. With all these provisions, I have been able to live for 2 years, but now my supply is exhausted." There is nothing left in the pantry, and the candle you see is the last one. And then? And then, my dear, we shall remain in the dark." "Then, dear Daddy," said Pinocchio, "there is no time to lose. We must find a way to escape immediately." "To escape? But how?" "We might escape through the mouth of the shark into the sea and swim away." "That's all very well, dear Pinocchio, but I can't swim." "That doesn't matter. I'm a good swimmer. You can come on my back, and I'll carry you safely to the shore." "It's no use, my boy," answered Geppetto with a sad smile, shaking his head. "A puppet like you, only 3 feet tall, could not be strong enough to swim if I were on his back." "Try it, and you'll see." Without another word, Pinocchio took the candle, went ahead, and showed his father the way, saying to him, "Follow me, and don't be frightened." They went like this for some time, through the whole body and the stomach of the shark. When they came to his throat, they stopped to look round, as they wanted to seize the right moment for their flight. You must know that the shark was very old, and that he suffered from asthma and palpitation of the heart. He had to sleep with his mouth wide open, so when Pinocchio reached his throat and looked upwards, he could see a large strip of starry sky and a big bright moon. "This is the right moment to escape," he whispered to his father. "The shark is sleeping like a dormouse, the sea is smooth, and it is as bright as day. Come, Daddy, come after me, and in a few minutes we shall be free." And they did it. They climbed up the shark's throat, and when they were in that huge mouth, they passed his tongue on tiptoe. His tongue was as long and wide as a fair-sized garden path. They were just prepared to jump into the sea when the shark sneezed, shaking them so violently that they fell back into his stomach. Their fall extinguished the candle, and father and son were in the dark. "Now what shall we do?" said Pinocchio. "Now, my son, we are lost." "Why should we be lost?" "Give me your hand, Daddy, and be careful not to slip." "Where are we going? We must try again. Come with me, and don't be frightened." With these words, Pinocchio took his father's hand, and, all the time walking on tiptoe, again they went up the monster's throat, walked along his tongue, and climbed over the 3 rows of teeth. Before jumping into the sea, the puppet said to his father, "Now climb on my back and stick tight. I'll do the rest." As soon as Geppetto was on his back, Pinocchio jumped into the sea and began to swim. The sea was as smooth as oil, the moon shone brightly, and the shark slept so soundly that the firing of a cannon would not have disturbed him. Chapter 36. At last, Pinocchio ceases to be a puppet and becomes a real boy. While Pinocchio was swimming towards the land as quickly as he could, he noticed that his father, sitting on his back with his legs in the water, was trembling violently, as though feverish. He was shivering because of cold or of fright. Who knows? Perhaps a little of both. But Pinocchio thought he was frightened, and he tried to comfort him. "Courage, Daddy! In a few minutes we shall reach the land and be safe." "But where is this land?" asked the old man, growing more uneasy every moment, and blinking like a sailor threading a needle. "Here I am looking everywhere, and I can't see anything but water and sky." "But I see land too," said the puppet. "You know I am like a cat. I see better at night than in daytime." Poor Pinocchio pretended to be cheerful, but he was rather discouraged. He grew weaker and breathed with difficulty. In short, he was almost exhausted, and land was still very far away. He swam until he could breathe no longer. Then he turned to his father and said, "Daddy, help me! I am dying!" Father and son were about to drown together, when a voice, like a badly tuned guitar, said, "Who is dying?" "I and my poor father." "I recognize your voice. You are Pinocchio." "Right. And who are you?" "I am the tunny fish, your pal in the shark's body." "How did you escape?" I did the same as you, but you showed the way. I followed you, and I too escaped. Dear Tunny, you've come just in time. I beg you, for the love you have for your children, the little tunnies, to help us, or we are lost." "Of course, with all my heart. Catch my tail, and let me tow you. You will reach land in 4 minutes." You can be sure that Geppetto and Pinocchio accepted the invitation at once, but instead of catching the tunny's tail, they found it better to sit on his back. "Are we too heavy?" asked Pinocchio. "Heavy? No, on the contrary. You're light as a feather. It's as if I had 2 empty seashells on my back," answered the tunny, who was as big and strong as a 2-year-old calf. Reaching land, Pinocchio jumped down first, and then he helped his father. Then he turned to the tunny and said in a trembling voice, "My dearest friend, you have saved my father's life. I cannot find words to thank you. May I give you a kiss as a token of my eternal gratitude?" The tunny put his nose out of the water, and Pinocchio, kneeling on the ground, pressed a loving kiss on its mouth. At this sign of real, unaffected love, the tunny, who was not used to such things, was so moved that, ashamed to be seen crying like a baby, he dived under the water and disappeared. Meanwhile, the sun had risen. Pinocchio gave his arm to Geppetto, who was so weak that he could hardly stand, and said, "Lean on my arm, dear daddy, and let us go. We must walk slowly like snails, and when we are tired, we shall stop and rest." "And where shall we go?" asked Geppetto. "We'll try to find a house or a cabin where we can ask for a bit of bread and some straw to make our bed." They had walked hardly 100 steps when they noticed by the roadside 2 ugly faces waiting to beg of the passers-by. They were the fox and the cat, but they were so changed you could hardly have recognized them. The cat had pretended so long to be blind that she really had become blind. The fox had grown old. His fur was entirely moth-eaten on one side, and he had even lost his tail. This had happened because the wretched thief became so poor that one day he had to sell his beautiful tail to a hawker who wanted it for driving away flies. "Oh, Pinocchio," sobbed the fox, "give something to 2 poor invalids." "Invalids?" repeated the cat. "Goodbye, scoundrels," answered the puppet. "You cheated me once, but you will never will again. Believe me, Pinocchio, we are really poor and miserable." "Poor and miserable," repeated the cat. "If you are poor, serve you right. Remember the proverb, easy come, easy go. Goodbye, scoundrels. Have pity on us, on us. Goodbye, scoundrels. Remember the proverb, the devil's flower is all bran." "Do not abandon us." "Us," repeated the cat. "Goodbye, scoundrels. Remember the proverb, he who steals his neighbor's cloak ends his life without a shirt." Speaking thus, Pinocchio and Geppetto went peacefully on their way, but they had hardly gone another 100 steps when they noticed, at the end of a narrow path in a meadow, a charming little cottage made of bricks and tiles with a roof of straw. "Someone must live in that cottage," said Pinocchio. "Let us knock on the door." "Who is it?" said a tiny voice inside. "A poor father and his poor son, with no bread and without a home," answered the puppet. "Turn the key and the door will open," said the tiny voice. Pinocchio turned the key and the door opened. They went in and looked around, but they saw nobody. "Where can the house owner be?" asked Pinocchio in amazement. "Here I am, up here." Father and son looked up at the roof, and there on a little crossbeam was the talking cricket. "Oh, my dear cricket," said Pinocchio with a polite bow. "So I am your dear cricket now? Do you remember when you chased me from your home by throwing a hammer at me? You are right, cricket. Drive me away too. Throw a hammer at me too, but for pity's sake don't drive away my poor father. I shall have pity on both of you, father and son, but I wanted you to remember the cruel treatment I received. It may teach you that in this world we should treat everyone kindly as far as it is possible, that we ourselves may be treated kindly when we need it." You are right, Cricket. You are absolutely right, and I'll remember the lesson. But tell me, how did you manage to buy this beautiful cottage? This cottage was given to me yesterday by a kind goat with beautiful blue hair. What has become of the goat? I don't know. When will she be back? She will never be back. She left yesterday, very sad and bleating as if to say, poor Pinocchio, I shall never see him again. The shark must have eaten him by now. Did she say that? It must have been the fairy. It was surely the fairy, my dear little fairy, cried Pinocchio, sobbing bitterly and bursting into floods of tears. When he had had a good cry, he dried his eyes and made a good bed of straw for old Geppetto. Then he said to the talking Cricket, Tell me, Cricket, where can I get a cup of milk for my poor father? Giangio, the gardener, lives 3 paddocks away from here. He has some cows. If you go there and you might get some milk. Pinocchio ran at once to Giangio's house, who asked him, How much milk do you want? I want a cupful. A cup of milk costs a penny. First give me a penny. I haven't even a farthing, answered Pinocchio very sadly. That's too bad, answered the gardener. If you haven't even a farthing, why should I have milk for you? Oh, never mind, said Pinocchio, and he turned to go away. Wait a minute, said Giangio. Perhaps we can manage it. Will you turn the windlass for me? What is a windlass? It's a machine that carries up water from the well to water the garden. I'll try. Well, if you will draw 100 buckets of water, I'll give you a cup of milk. I'll do it. Giangio took the puppet into the garden and showed him how to turn the windlass. Pinocchio started at once, but before he could draw the 100 buckets of water, he was perspiring from head to foot. He had never worked like that before. It was my donkey's work until today, said the gardener, but the poor beast is dying. May I go and see him? Asked Pinocchio. Certainly. When Pinocchio came into the stable, he saw a fine donkey on the straw. He was dying of hunger and hard work. He looked at him and said to himself, trembling, I think I know that donkey. His face isn't new to me. And coming near him, he said in ass idiom, Who are you? At this question, the dying donkey opened his eyes and answered in the same language, I am Lampwick. After which he closed his eyes and died. Oh, poor Lampwick, murmured Pinocchio, and taking some straw, he wiped the tears that were running down his cheek. Are you so sorry for this donkey that doesn't cost you anything? Said the gardener. What shall I do? I who paid for it in hard cash. I'll tell you, he was my friend. Your friend? Yes, he was a schoolmate of mine. What? Shouted Giangio, bursting out laughing. What? You had an ass for a schoolmate? Fine lessons you must have had in your school. The puppet was so shamed by these words that he did not answer, but took his milk and returned to the cottage. From that day, for over 5 months, he got up before dawn every morning to turn the windlass so as to earn the cup of milk for his father. But that was not all. In his spare time, he learned how to weave baskets of reeds. He sold them, and they had enough money, and they had enough to pay for all their needs. He also made a fine little cart, in which he took his father for a ride and a breath of fresh air when the weather was fine. When evening came, he practiced reading and writing. For a few pennies he bought a large book in the city, whose index and title page were missing, but it served him very well. He cut a pen out of a small twig, and as he had neither ink nor inkwell, he used a little bottle of cherry and blackberry juice. Because of his ingenuity and his diligence, his father, whose health was still very bad, could live very comfortably. He even saved 2 shillings to buy himself a new suit. One morning he said to his father, "I'm going to the market today to buy himself a new jacket, a cap, and a pair of shoes. When I come back," he added, laughing, "I shall be so beautiful that you'll mistake me for a great lord." He felt very happy and satisfied as he ran along. Suddenly he heard someone speaking to him. He turned and saw a fine snail coming from the hedge. "Don't you know me?" said the snail. Perhaps, but I'm not sure." "Don't you remember that snail who was the blue-haired fairy's maid? Don't you remember how I came downstairs to let you in, and how I found you with your foot sticking in the door?" "I remember everything," cried Pinocchio. "Tell me quickly, dear snail, where did you leave my good fairy? What is she doing? Has she pardoned me? Does she still remember me? Does she love me still? Is she very far from here? Can I go and see her?" Pinocchio asked all these questions as fast as he could without once stopping to breathe, but the snail answered with her usual slowness, "My dear Pinocchio, the poor fairy is sick in a hospital." "In a hospital?" "Unhappily, yes. Harassed by 1,000 calamities, she is very, very ill, and she hasn't the money to buy even a tiny piece of bread." "Is it possible? Oh, how dreadful! Oh, the poor fairy, that poor fairy! If I had £1,000,000, I'd give them to her, but I have only 2 shillings. Take them. I was just going to buy myself a new suit. Take them, quickly, snail, to the kind fairy." "But your new suit?" "What does a new suit matter? I'd even sell these rags I have on if I could help her. Go, snail, hurry. If you will come back again in 2 days, I may be able to give you a little more. I've worked until now for my father. From now on I'll work 5 hours longer every day for my kind mother. Goodbye, snail. I'll expect you in 2 days." The snail, most surprisingly, began to run like a lizard in summer. When Pinocchio arrived back, his father asked him, "Where is your new suit?" "I couldn't find one that fitted me." "Never mind, I'll buy it next time." That evening, instead of working until 10 o'clock, Pinocchio worked until midnight, and instead of making 8 baskets, he made 16. Then he went to bed and fell asleep. As he slept, he dreamed he saw the fairy, lovely and smiling, who gave him a kiss, saying, "Brave Pinocchio, in return for your good heart, I forgive you all your past misdeeds. Children who love their parents and help them when they are sick and poor are worthy of praise and love, even if they are not models of obedience and good behavior. Be good in future, and you will be happy." Then the dream ended, and Pinocchio awoke, full of amazement. You can imagine how astonished he was when he saw that he was no longer a puppet, but a real boy, just like other boys. He looked round, but instead of the straw walls of the cottage, he saw a lovely little room, simply though beautifully furnished and papered. He jumped out of bed and found a pretty new suit, a new cap, a pair of boots as pretty as a picture. When he was dressed, he put his hands in his pockets and found there a little ivory purse on which these words were written: "The blue-haired fairy returns Pinocchio's 2 shillings and thanks him for his good heart." He opened the purse, and, instead of 2 silver shillings, there were 20 gold pieces in it. Then he went to look in the mirror, but he could not recognize himself. Instead of the usual picture of a wooden puppet, he saw the expressive, intelligent face of a good-looking boy with brown hair and blue eyes, who looked contented and full of joy. Amidst all these wonders, Pinocchio no longer knew whether he was awake or asleep with his eyes open. "And my father? Where is he?" he cried suddenly. He hurried into the next room, and there he saw old Geppetto, well and brisk and good-natured as he had been before. He had again taken up his old art of wood-carving, and just then he was planning a beautiful cornice decorated with leaves and flowers and animal heads. "Daddy, tell me, what is the meaning of this sudden change?" asked Pinocchio, hugging and kissing him. "This sudden change is all due to you. answered Geppetto. Why is it due to me? Because when children who were naughty become good, it gives a new smiling appearance to the whole family. And the old wooden Pinocchio, where is he? There he is, answered Geppetto, pointing to a large puppet that was leaning against a chair with his head on side, his arms hanging loosely, and his legs bent and crossed, so that it was a miracle that he could stand there. Pinocchio turned and looked at him for a moment, and then said to himself contentedly, "How ridiculous I was when I was a puppet, and how happy I am to have become a real boy." And that's the end of that story.